Former bond salesmen were on the sidewalks trying to sell apples. Former clerks roamed the business districts in an attempt to make a living by shining shoes. Unemployed and homeless men welcomed a rest for vagrancy and warmth and food to be had in jail. Over 100,000 American workers applied for jobs in the Soviet Union. We're actually going to read a one-page newspaper article on that. Shanty towns appeared in and around the industrial cities, and the inhabitants of these housing developments, born of desperation, bitterly named them for the President of the United States. You know what that's called? It's a Hooverville. Going on to page 2, Black Thursday, from the New York Times, October 25, 1929. Worst stock crash stemmed by banks. Quoting from the first paragraph, we're going to go the first and the third paragraph. That's all we're going to take from this. The most disastrous decline in the biggest and broadest stock market of history rocked the financial district yesterday. In the very midst of the collapse, 5 of the country's most influential bankers hurried to the office of J.P. Morgan and Company, and after a brief conference gave out the word that they believed the foundations of the market to be sound, that the market smash has been caused by technical rather than fundamental considerations, and that many sound stocks are selling too low. Of course they had to come out with that story. They had to. I don't say it's right. I'm just saying you wouldn't expect anything else. It carried down with its speculators, big and little, in every part of the country, wiping out thousands of accounts. It is probable that if the stockholders of the country's foremost corporations had not been calmed by the attitude of leading bankers in the subsequent rally, the business of the country would have been seriously affected. Doubtless business will feel the effect of the drastic stock shakeout, and this is expected to hit the luxuries most severely. He goes on to name the 5 bankers who came to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York at 4:30 p.m. The stock exchange firm of Merrill Lynch and Company, in a message advising customers to keep accounts well margined without waiting for a direct request, said that the investors, quote, with available funds should take advantage of this break to buy good securities. So we know about the stock crash. Now let's look at the course of unemployment. Chapter 4, page 6. An economist in this selection briefly traces the ebb and flow of the unemployment problem from 1929 until 1940. From Paul Webbink, W-E-B-B-I-N-K, Unemployment in the United States, 1930 through 40. Within a few months after the stock market collapse of October 1929, unemployment increased steadily, with only a few temporary setbacks. For March 1930, the estimates range from nearly 3,250,000 to more than 4 million. A year later, these had doubled to between 7.5 and almost 8 million. Some estimates go as high as 14 million by 1933. Other estimates for March 1933 range from 13,577,000 to the National Industrial Conference Board's estimate 14,586,000. American Federation of Labor's estimation 15,389,000. The Congress of Industrial Organization estimates 16 million unemployed. But we get the idea, a lot of unemployed people. By September 1936, the volume of unemployment was set by various estimators at between 5.3 million and 8 million. So a lot of people found jobs in those intervening years from 33 to 36. A lot of people, 5 or 6 million jobs. A sharp increase resulted from the renewed depression of the winter 1937-38. The court packing plan and the unconstitutional intrusion of the federal government into business, as well as the drastic raising of taxes, caused that recession. So productivity plunged 38% in 1937. I get that from Saltzman. So we went from between 5 and 8 million unemployed. Remember, that's down from the 14 or 15 million. Came down to between 5 and 8 million. Shoots back up to somewhere between 10 and 11 million. Now that's all we need from that particular article, and it ends abruptly right there. There's not much more we could get from it if we wanted. But it's interesting. just the roller coaster of unemployment that the country was on. Like depression within a depression caused by the government in the middle of it trying some super duper efforts to try to get the economy going, caused a super duper 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 problem in the middle of a big problem caused by the government. Okay, on to number 5, Article 5, page 7. The lucky who kept their jobs. Quote, even the employed had their difficulties with reduced rates of pay and shortened work weeks. This selection by Don D. Lescohier, L-S-C-O-H-I-E-R, is from the 3rd volume of John R. Common's History of Labor in the United States, 1896 to 1932. And we are taking here the 3rd paragraph down. In 1921, wage cuts were advocated early in the Depression to liquidate labor costs. Now we have an updated terminology that's a little different now. We wouldn't call it a depression. We would call it a recession because it didn't last very long. I don't know where that distinction first got made, but here this distinction is not made. In 1920 and 21, or was it 21 to 22, there was a severe economic dip. And then a quick recovery. We all know the booming 20s and the roaring 20s included a beginning that was severe and painful. He mentions right off the bat here, in 1921, wage cuts were advocated early in the Depression to liquidate labor costs. So companies, when the Depression hit, they see their income, they see their profits going down. Now they have to cut the cost of labor, and they have to cut the number of hours they give to each person. Otherwise, and they need to cut jobs too, but otherwise they just have to cut jobs, period. So in 1930 and 31, they were opposed both by the government and by leading employers because these popular theories had taken over in the 20s. This theory of maintaining wage earners' high incomes, which would furnish the market for products and help businesses recover. Keeping up purchasing power, they called it. What's the purchasing power that the people have? Raise their wages, give them more purchasing power to put more money into the economy to make more wealth for everybody. Raise their wages to give them purchasing power. So they had a policy, we'll hear a little more about, specifically, don't cut wages. The president wanted businesses to sacrifice their profits. Businesses did sacrifice their profits. Let's hear here. Now, in the Depression of 2021, wage cuts were advocated early and undertaken, and there was a readjustment. In 1921, they were inaugurated long before businesses had reached a dangerous position. In 1931, they became common only after a large number of businesses had taken heavy losses. Realization of the reluctance of a large number of employers to cut wages caused wage earners and the public to accept them calmly when they did come, perhaps too calmly. Almost makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck that people sat by, watched businesses go broke paying wages they couldn't afford, and then the businesses folded and those people were just unemployed and that productivity was just gone, liquidated, because of this policy that everybody, including the business owners, bought into. This idea that the nation won't recover unless we keep wages high, unless we keep purchasing power high, that we can't be selfish and greedy and just restrict wages. We can't hurt the poor little worker. So that's philosophy plays a role. Surprise. Continuing, page 8, same article. Apparently the theory had been accepted too readily, and too much importance had been given to the purchasing power of labor. For when the purchasing power of millions of farmers and investors holding delinquent securities was seriously reduced, wage earners' purchases could hardly sustain the market. Right? All the other guys that get wiped out in the stock exchange problem, you can't just say keep wages up. You know, the richest 5 or 10% have taken a severe hit to their wealth, and you can't just look at that and say, well, let's make sure that the guy who buys an apple every day has his money